What's up, you all? You are tuned into Millie Talks Truth TV, and today we are going to be discussing the topic of overcoming anxiety on this girl talk / chit chat. Okay, I wanted to talk about this because this is something that I struggle with at times, and I know there's other people that struggle with it as well, especially with the climate of everything that's going on in our world and the foolishness. People are feeling real anxious right now, and I understand why. So even before that though, I would have anxiety, and I really just wanted to share a couple of tips that have basically helped me. Once again, this is just things that work for me, but I wanted to share them just in case it might help somebody. So if you do like this video, when you get done with it, make sure that you give it a thumbs up, that you share it with your friends and them, because we talk about a lot of different topics on this channel, okay? Even get into some of the tips, I first wanted to give a definition of anxiety because everybody's definition may be different, right? So this is the textbook definition of anxiety. Anxiety, a feeling of worry, nervousness, or unease, typically about an imminent event or something with an uncertain outcome, okay? And then there was also some synonyms to that, saying like apprehension, dread, uncertainty. So I just wanted to start and give just a little background about like when I started to notice when I was anxious, like when did it start, where did it come from, all that stuff. I would say that my anxiety really started around towards the end of high school, around the time I was going to school. So I'd say my early 20s. I'm 27 now, so I'd say around the age of 20, 21, around that age. And I do feel like some of it was triggered, but I will say this, so another background. Mental disorders, anxiety, depression, those things do run in my family. My mom suffers from depression, anxiety. She takes medication for it. And I used to would have these feelings of where I was just always like worried. I'm not gonna say used to, because I still do sometimes, but it was very, very prevalent, I guess you could say, when I was younger, around that age that I just mentioned. It might have been because of some of the life changes, just that transitional period, of when you are leaving high school and you're going to a new place, or maybe you're just going and you're just getting out of school and trying to figure out your life, figure out what you want to do, if you want to work, if you do want to go to college, whatever the case may be. And that was also around the time that my stepdad died. And just throughout my early 20s in general, like there was just different things that I feel like triggered and onset it. I don't know if that's a word, but we're gonna go with it. That made the anxiety come on, basically. Y'all know what I'm trying to say. And so with that, like I said, I was having all these feelings of anxiousness and just being worried all the time, stressing out about stuff. And sometimes there would be times where, it wasn't even necessarily anything that was going on around me. I would just be feeling anxious, and that was when I realized that I do have anxiety. It was something that didn't really go away, So from that, because I do have a background in social work, and like I said, this is regardless of that, like my family has dealt with this, I do want to make a video just kind of talking a little bit more about that journey. Let me know if you all want to hear more about just my journey with mental health, and then also some of the things that I've dealt with my family. But that's not what this video is for. This video is to give y'all some tips, okay? That's what this video is for. But I think through since I had seen it before and learned about it, I knew of better ways to kind of deal with it when it did happen. Right now, just because back then I knew some of the ways to deal with it doesn't mean I always dealt with it in the best way, because sometimes when we're anxious or depressed or stressed out or whatever the case may be, we have a lot of unhealthy coping mechanisms, right? We have a lot of things that we do that are not necessarily the best choice, you know? And I did feel like there was ways that I was coping with it that was not in the best way. So with that being said, these are just tips that over time I have seen that has helped me to just be more aware of my feelings of when I'm anxious, you know, helping me to kind of get through some of those feelings at times, because when you have a anxiety disorder, just like with depression, it's not something you can just be like, oh, it's just gonna go away, it's just gonna be gone. You can find ways to deal with it, you can find ways to cope with it, but that doesn't always mean that those feelings aren't gonna be there at times, right? So I'm just sharing things that kind of help me when I do feel like that. So the number one thing that I wrote, and these aren't necessarily in any particular order, but the number one thing that I wrote was acknowledge it. Now, of course, that may sound like, okay, duh, you need to acknowledge it. But I think a lot of times when we're anxious, we don't necessarily acknowledge that we are stressed out, or we don't necessarily acknowledge that we are feeling certain types of ways. But especially in Black culture, you know, I'm a Black woman, so I can only speak from my experience, but we're taught to kind of, you know, bury those feelings down, not deal with them, be busy. That's why, you know, with all this stuff that's going on, in the stillness of everything, I honestly feel like it's not that bad of a thing, because sometimes we need to learn how to be still, and we need to learn how to sit with our emotions, because a lot of times we're not taught to deal with our emotions, or when we deal with those emotions, we're dealing with them in, once again, ways that aren't necessarily the healthiest, right? So I think when we can acknowledge, like, you know, there's times where I'll start to feel like that, and I'll say like, okay, I'm feeling anxious right now. Let me sit my tail down somewhere, okay? Let me get, you know, go get away from people or whatever. You have to acknowledge it. And it's just like so cliche to say, you know how people will be like, well, the first step is admit it, but it really is true. When you acknowledge it, you're giving yourself the permission to feel those feelings, right? It's just so important for us to give ourselves permission to feel, because if we don't, then once again, we are dealing with it in other ways, or we are burying we're burying those emotions and those feelings, and you know, that's not good, okay? Don't do that, y'all. Another tip that I have when trying to overcome anxiety as well is to check your surroundings. And when I say check your surroundings, I'm not saying like when you at the grocery store, you know, folks who can't go nowhere, but people still be out. I still be at the grocery store, but I take precaution, okay? I still gotta go where I need to go. But when I say check your surroundings, I'm basically saying that you need to check the things around you that may trigger some of your anxiety, okay? And that could be people in your life, that could be just unhealthy habits. Like, I know for me, once again, I can only speak for myself. I noticed that I am more anxious whenever I am in spaces where I don't necessarily feel like I can be myself, right? Or just have negative energy, you know? Like, I don't need that in my life, because that triggers my anxiety. And two, it's also one of those things too where you just have to know and start to really identify those triggers. Because if I know that me, let's say, that's another thing I will say, because I'm being real transparent with y'all. Sometimes what I tend to do is I tend to overwhelm myself, because I feel like I have to take everything on my plate sometimes, and I don't know how to say no, which I'm learning, and I have learned, I would say in this past year, girl has gotten good with her boundaries, okay? because I was just the type of girl to get up and go. You know, when anybody needed me, I'd hop up. I said yes to everything, and I was burnt out in the process, you know. And so I had to learn, one, how to say no, not, you know, learning how to not procrastinate too, because then when you have so much on your plate, then it's like when you're feeling overwhelmed, you don't feel like doing certain things, and then you procrastinate, right? And especially on like personal stuff, like I was, you know, recently just going through a period where I felt like it was a lot of stuff just happening at the same time, like, you know, family stuff, and then the tornado happened in Nashville, and a lot of the families I work with were affected by that. And so me just feeling those emotions from them, like, it was just a lot, you know. And I'm thankful, you know, that I am in a healthy state and I am safe, and, you know, all those things, because it could be so much worse. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to share this video, because I know there's a lot of people that are living in places or conditions where, you know, sometimes you can't control the things that are happening around you, right? And so I think it's really important to find your peace in the midst of the storm, per se, because one, that's why it has to come from in here. If it's always coming from external sources, then you're not gonna have any peace, okay? Not to say that external things can't make you happy, but you have to start to learn yourself to know the things that make you happy, if that makes sense. Hopefully that made sense. But yeah, so that's definitely one thing that I really try to do when I am feeling anxious, is just really doing a speed check, I guess you could say, and saying, okay, what is triggering this? You know, why am I feeling like this? And, you know, moving accordingly. Even if that means sometimes you gotta back away from some stuff, you know? And if that's what you gotta do, that's what you gotta do. You gotta take care of you, okay, boo? Okay? Being able to write out how you're feeling, I think is really important. It just helps you to, you know, to kind of get it out. Even if you need to talk to somebody, I am an advocate for therapy. And if you don't have the money to get a therapist like I do at the moment, there is a lot of different ways that you can get good counsel. And that could be a mentor, that could be somebody that you trust. But until you know, you can get them coins to get your therapist or whatever the case may be, like, make sure that you are finding an outlet to be able to process those emotions. Once again, you don't want it to get to the point where you're literally balling up everything and then it's just coming out in other ways, right? Your breathing. I know that sounds so simple, but it's really so true. Like, literally breathe. No, seriously. We gotta breathe, y'all. Like, y'all, even before I recorded this video, I was feeling anxious recording this video, and I don't even know why, but I had to take a couple of deep breaths, and honestly, it made me feel better. There's another exercise I do, like they call it grounding techniques. So which basically just helps you to get back to you, right? Get back to your natural state before the anxiety, before all of that. And one of them is just like, you're literally, in a nutshell, basically, you're literally just like clenching everything, like literally clenching everything. You start from like your feet and work your way up, and then you release it, and you feel so much better. I've done that a couple times when I'm feeling anxious, and like that really helps me to feel better. And also, you know, taking a hot shower, taking a hot bath, get you some bubbles. Get you some bubbles, I said bubbles. Get you some bubbles, okay? Take you a little nice self-care bath, okay? Even working out, dancing, like, you have to find where it works out for you, okay? Because everybody deals with things differently, and you have to find your safe space and your outlet that is going to help you to get past some of those anxious thoughts when you're feeling like that, okay? And it's not to say that you're just like being busy just to be busy. Like, being busy just to be busy is being busy and being messy and just constantly being on social media all the time. And I'm not saying not to get on social media, but that is important. Sometimes that goes back to what I was talking about with your surroundings. I don't know why I left that out. Thank you, Lord. You gotta check your surroundings too when it comes to like stuff like that, especially y'all with us being in the house, you know, and that's all we have access to because we can't be around folks. Please limit your time on social media, because constantly staring at your feed all day, looking at this and this and this about this and about that, and now all you see in the news is all the foolishness. You're gonna be stressed out. Like, I found myself like that one day. Like, I was on social media when all this stuff happened, and I was getting stressed out. And not to say that we shouldn't take precaution, but certain things, okay? We can't be just constantly looking at that and then wondering why, you know, we're stressed out. So there's that. The last little tip that I have is basically just, this is something that's really important to me. I'll never force religion on a person. That's not what I'm here for. Once again, I can only tell y'all what works for me. But for me, honestly, what really has helped me through my anxiety is the Lord, okay? Seriously though, having a personal relationship with God has really gotten me through a lot of my anxiety and the things that, you know, like, he just helps me so much. Like, he really does. And when I'm feeling anxious, a lot of times I'll try to watch a sermon, or I'll try to put on some worship music, you know, something that is just gonna get me in his presence and get me in a mode of where, you know, I'm open to hearing from him. And I want to do a whole nother video too about my faith and all that stuff, because, you know, I recognize sometimes too, we have to learn the way that God speaks to us, because he speaks differently to everybody, I feel. But he really does comfort me in those moments of where I'm feeling anxious and where I'm feeling, you know, just down and out and depressed, you know, like put on a sermon or when I worship or whatever the case may be, it really does make me feel better. So I would also say that, like, getting your word, whatever it is for you on your spiritual journey, like, I definitely encourage you to find that place where you are able to connect with God when you are feeling those type of emotions. Because for me, it really does help. So those are all my tips for today, y'all. I hope that this list has kind of helped you. Definitely let me know in the comment section below if there's certain things that you do that help you to cope with your anxiety. And I definitely want to come back and, you know, talk about some of the other things that I said I was going to discuss throughout this video. But once again, I really do hope that this has helped you. And if you liked it, once again, make sure that you subscribe, you comment, and hit that notification bell to keep up with notifications for my channel. Okay. So thank you for tuning in, and I will see you in the next video.